Good afternoon and welcome to St Anne's Church. I think it was last week that I took you on a little tour of my office, my study in the house, and lots of people have commented on that. And so today I thought we might just pinpoint one or two things in church here in St Anne's, which we sometimes may not have adverted to or we may have forgotten. But I suppose one of the main things about the church is it's simply a building to gather people. The original word church comes from a Greek word, ecclesia, and a Hebrew word chahal, meaning a gathering of people. And so people gathered, they were then church. This is the church coming together. And then when they decided to build separate buildings, the building itself became known as the church. And some are very simple, some are very ornate. And we're blessed, I think, here in St Anne's with a mixture of the two. People often want to add things out of devotion, and so that's why we do get things like statues and holy pictures and stations of the cross and so on. Quite interesting that this church of St Anne was built in 1850, and I was just before Mass today looking at some of the descriptions of the church. Apparently, it was built to accommodate 800 people and 200 standing. Now, where they fit it, I just do not know. But of course, you have to bear in mind that as far as I understand it, the communion rails would have been here, and people would have come up to Holy Communion and queued up. There was no central aisle until about 1980-ish. I think it was Father Woolston who got some young people on a youth workers scheme from Skelmersdale to come and, I think, cut the benches and make the central aisle, which of course is a great asset to the church nowadays. So that's just a little bit generally about the church. The decoration took place in 2002, just after I came, when we had the new lights installed, the roof was decorated, and then 2 years later, of course, the rain started coming in, and we've now managed to seal the main roof. It's all, we hope, had the first aid and prevented water from coming in, but we still have to do the aisles and the tower at the back of the church. Another little thing not many people know about is that on every altar in the Catholic Church, we have what's called the altar stone. It's a marble stone usually with some relics of saints installed there as a reminder of the catacombs and those early days when Christians in Rome were persecuted for their faith, and they often took refuge in these underground caves where they would bury their dead. And I'm not all that sure whether or not they would celebrate Mass on the tombs of the martyrs, but certainly the feeling is that perhaps they might well have done, and that this is a reminder of the sacrifice of people's lives for Jesus, for Christ. And of course, the altar itself is the most sacred place in the church, where the sacrifice of the Mass takes place whenever we gather for the Mass. But it's a reminder also of we're connected with the communion of saints, all those members people who try to follow Christ in days gone by, living and dead, people living today as well. So we usually cover up the altar and have a little dust cover on the top just to keep the altar tidy and dust-free. Also worth noticing the statues. Sometimes you can get dozens of statues in churches, but we have a few, and this is a lovely one of Our Lady. We always find statues of Our Lady, and it shows her as the crown, the Queen of Heaven, holding Jesus, who himself is actually reaching out his own hand to Mary in a loving gesture towards her. But he carries the orb as a sign he is the King of Heaven, King of the universe. And on this other side, you've got this lovely statue of St. Joseph. And as has been pointed out, we don't know much about St. Joseph at all. He's a background figure, but obviously played a crucial role in bringing up Jesus. And the lovely thing about this statue is you can see his hand. It's in a lovely gesture of calming, of calmness, and just saying, be still in the presence of the Lord. Perhaps that's what he's saying to us. Let's move up to the old high altar. And we have to bear in mind that up to about 1970, Mass would have been celebrated here at the altar. That altar wouldn't have existed down there. The priest would have been sitting, I think, on either side. The Sedilia would have been there with your choir stalls here. And for most of the Mass, the priest would have started at the bottom of the steps, and then he would have gone up, and for most of the Mass, he would have had his back to the people. Every now and then, he would be turning round to say, Dominus vobiscum, et cum spiritu tuum. The Lord be with you and with your spirit. And then he would turn around again. The idea behind it in those days was the priest is leading the people in their praise of God and in the celebration of the Mass. Nowadays, I think another aspect that we celebrate by having the Mass facing the people is we are gathered around, and that the priest is there leading people in their prayers and in the celebration of the Mass. And thank God for that. It makes so much more sense than the priest kind of muttering to himself here. Just one or two things to notice about, again, the decoration of the church. I think sometimes it's a great pity that we've got this edifice here above the tabernacle, because it obscures the lovely stained glass window. But on the other hand, these are wonderful panels. Two panels depicting the birth of Jesus. It's very self-evident there. Looks like a great big donkey in the background there, and a cow. But here, Jesus being laid in the tomb after his death. The grieving Mary in the back there, and possibly Joseph of Arimathea being around there to put Jesus in the tomb that he built for himself. Again, below we've got lovely flowers here in the middle, again for decoration. You've got the angel coming to Mary, the angel, and then Mary in a pose of prayer, receiving the message that she was to be the mother of God, receiving the invitation to be the mother of God. What I love is that above the tabernacle, you've got this rather ornate display, but you've got the bird there, which is a pelican. And the pelican is a sign of the Eucharist, because apparently pelicans pluck their own breasts to get blood to feed their young. And you can see exactly that in the little depiction there. Somebody said it's the liver bird from Liverpool, but perhaps they pinched the idea from here. And then on either side you have the statue of St. Benedict, because this has been a Benedictine parish and church from way back before 1732. It would have been Benedictine monks who served this area. And so you've got St. Benedict there with the raven that is often a signature. He used to bring some food for him. And then on the other side, St. Benedict's twin sister, St. Scholastica, who formed a community of nuns for as a monastic community as well. The sanctuary lamp here comes from St. Austin's in Liverpool, which was an Ampleforth Benedictine parish, which closed about 6 years ago now. And we were in need at the time of a sanctuary lamp, and then I managed to get this from the Ampleforth community, and it's a very fitting, lovely design for our church here. Of course, the sanctuary lamp is always lit to show that our Lord is present in the Blessed Sacrament, and you'll find this as one of the great hallmarks of Catholic churches, and in some Anglican churches too, where they reserve the sacrament. And finally, I thought it would be nice to draw your attention to this stone, which looks like a foundation stone. This would have been said originally in this area in a house in Orton Street. And then in 1732, they built a little chapel on the site of where the pastoral centre is at the moment. And then later on, that was demolished. One of our parishioners, Tom Forshaw, a great farmer and farming family in the parish, found that in a field and dug it up, and you can see 1668 was when the little chapel was probably built, and I'm not all that clear on the history, but the inscription in Latin, in English says, "One lives better in a small place." And I've yet to work out the relevance of that. Anyway, I hope that short little tour of this area of the church may just be of interest to you and help you to be a little bit perhaps more observant of other things around the church which are here to lift up our minds and our hearts into God's presence.